are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles and Locked On Commanders your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles, joined by the host of the Locked On Commanders podcast, David Harrison. We are previewing a 1 o'clock matchup on Sunday between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders, the 3-0 Eagles versus the 2-1 Commanders. And David, thanks for joining the show, man. And it's going to be an interesting game. I feel like both teams are over 500. The Eagles undefeated, Washington 2-1. But it has been an up and down year for sure. I think the Eagles are still inconsistent, trying to find their way back to who they were in 2022. And the Commanders, I think some would be surprised they're 2-1. Some convincing wins, but also last week, a pretty convincing loss to Buffalo as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been a really interesting season, and something that I promised Locked On Commanders listeners and viewers was that, I couldn't promise them whether this team was only going to win 4 games or whether this team was going to win 14 games. But what I could promise them is that it was going to be really entertaining. And, I think the most entertaining TV shows, movies, they've got their highs, they've got their lows, and that's what keeps you kind of locked in is what is going to happen, because really anything could happen. And that's what we've seen so far from the Washington Commanders, from 2 fourth quarter comebacks, including coming back from 21-3 down on the road in a highly contentious place like Denver, Colorado, to almost messing up that comeback by giving up a Hail Mary at the end of the game, and then to a 16-0 result against the Buffalo Bills into the fourth quarter that ended up as a 37-3 blowout. I mean, this team has already given NFL fans and Commanders fans pretty much everything they could give in a season, and it's only been 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel that with the Eagles too. They're 3-0, but it's definitely been a roller coaster ride. You barely beat the New England Patriots after dominating them in the first quarter. Minnesota, you put up 34, but it still feels like there's still meat on the bones, and kind of felt the same way against Tampa Bay, although I will say I think that was their most complete win of the year. So we got storylines for you guys in today's show, matchups to watch, keys to victory. We want to let you know as well, this Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code in all lowercases LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And yeah, David, I feel like you're right. When you talk about the Commanders, if you were to tell people, without using context to the first 3 weeks, which you talked about has already been a roller coaster. If you told Commanders fans that they were going to be 2-1, considering the lower expectations, I'd say, of this season, they probably take that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that, so I did my regular season projections right before the regular season began, and I'm going to update them after every 4 weeks during the season or whatever. And when I did my first one, I came out and said, look, 2-2 is par, right? When you look at the schedule, Arizona Cardinals, Denver Broncos, Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills, 2-2 is par. Like you don't ever fist pump a par, you know what I mean? But you also don't cry a par. So coming out 2-2 would be par for the course. You've already got the 2 wins. So really at the end of week 4, if you end up 2-2, you're not going to be happy about it, but you're also not going to be too upset about it. At least you shouldn't be, because of the depth of competition. You've got 2 teams, the Arizona Cardinals and Denver Broncos, that, I mean, let's face it, they could be top 10 draft picks. You know what I mean? They'd be picking in the top 10 of the NFL draft next year. And then you got the Buffalo Bills and Philadelphia Eagles, who could be playing football on the last day of the football season this year. I mean, that is, if you can't get, you almost can't get any further on the spectrum other than maybe having the Arizona Cardinals and Houston Texans, who the Houston Texans have proven to be a really hard out as well. So, it's something that is interesting in this year's schedule. But I think the good thing is, as long as this team learns from whatever happens against Philadelphia Eagles, what already happened against Buffalo Bills, you got the Chicago Bears, you got the New England Patriots, you've got some very winnable games coming up after these first 4 games. So where you expect to come into the middle part of the season with a winning record.
Yeah, and I think for the Eagles, wins are what's most important, especially early on in the season, racking these wins up, because later on in the year, they've got Kansas City, San Francisco, Buffalo, 2 matchups against Dallas. The schedule definitely gets a lot more difficult. A Sunday night matchup with the Miami Dolphins. But I think at the same time, when you have Super Bowl expectations, I think it's not just, like Jalen Hurts is been continuing to say like winning is all that matters to a certain degree, but when you're a championship contender, how you win also matters, because how you beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or maybe the Washington Commanders this week, it's not going to get the job done against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs again. So I think for the Eagles, again, they're still trying to find their way. They've definitely played some, like the defensive line's been dominant for sure. So is the offensive line. Jalen Hurts has still made some elite throws and runs every single week, but definitely dealing with more inconsistency than the beginning of last year. They're dealing with more injuries on defense, changing to the staff. They have a brand new offensive and defensive coordinator. A lot of new starters on both sides too. This is what happens after a Super Bowl run. So I think it's par for the course. They're still trying to find their identity. I think the glass half full approach, David, would be though, they're still getting wins in spite of all this. And I still think controlling the game all 3 weeks. So we'll see if that continues against the Commanders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for the Commander side of things, it's going to be about controlling what they can control, and for the second straight week, you're going up against a defense that is in the bottom of the league in terms of calling blitzes, right? And that doesn't mean they're in the bottom of the league of impacting quarterbacks. It just means they're not doing it with extra attackers on a regular basis. And that just kind of shows you the strength of that Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. Coming into the Buffalo Bills game, it was expected. They only blitzed Sam Howell 5 times in that entire game. But if you watch the game and you look at the stats, you would think they were blitzing on almost every single down. But that offensive line, the tight end helpers, the running back helpers, they didn't have a good game against the Buffalo Bills. And we saw it against Tampa Bay on Monday night. And fortunately for me, I also covered the Buccaneers, so I got to watch that thing in real time as well. If the offensive line can't do their job against a base package, if we want to call it, we'll call it a base front, right? We'll just call it a base front. From the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers here, and according to Sports Info Solutions, the Philadelphia Eagles run 3 down linemen 41% of the time, 2 down linemen 28% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So really what the Eagles are doing is they're putting a whole lot of trash out there in the middle field and the deep part of the field to make quarterbacks have to sift through it, and then they're waiting for their defensive linemen to get home before the quarterback can dissect it all. It's exactly what happened against Baker Mayfield, and the Buffalo Bills were able to do that exact same thing to Sam Howell in week 3. So if the Eagles can do that again in week 4, that's why you see the uptick in interception from Sam Howell, because you have more trash to filter through in your opponent's secondary and middle part of the field, and you have less time to do it, and you're a young quarterback on top of it. That is a recipe for disaster against any opponent.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the key matchups to watch for sure. 1 o'clock kickoff for the Eagles and Commanders this Sunday at Lincoln Financial Field down in Philadelphia. David and I, we're going to get into some more matchups coming up next right here on Crossover Thursday. Locked on Eagles and Locked on Commanders. Guys, today's show is sponsored by Harry's. No matter why you shave, Harry's has you covered for the best shave of your life at a price that you're going to love. From their legendary high-quality razors to skin products like exfoliating face wash and hydrating lotion, Harry's gives you a premium shave without the premium price tag. Get better quality and a better price than other razors when you get Harry's delivered right to your door. A smooth shave shouldn't have to be rough on your wallet. The starter set is a $13 value for just $3 at harrys.com/NFL. It includes a 5-blade German-engineered razor, weight handles, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover. Scheduled delivery for refills as well, as low as $2, half of what you pay for other blades. Harry's makes the skincare products that will give you the best shave ever. Creams, washes, and lotions that'll keep your skin healthy and hydrated. Blades made in their own factory in Germany. Sleek, ergonomic weighted handles that look great in your bathroom and give you precise control with each swipe. There's no reason not to try Harry's. They have the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry, and they're still offering a no-risk trial. Don't like your shave? No worries. It's on them. Get your best shave ever this summer and fall now with Harry's razors and skincare products. Get a $13 starter set for just $3. Again, at harrys.com/NFL. It's harrys.com/NFL for a $3 starter set. This is Crossover Thursday right here on the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Commanders podcast. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined by David Harrison. We're going to dive into some matchups now for Eagles Commanders. 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday down at the Link. And, David, you were already talking about a key one, and it was the key for the Commanders in that loss against Buffalo. It was, can their offensive line hold up against a good front? Can they protect Sam Howell? And the Bills didn't even really blitz that much, and they could not protect Howell. I think that's going to be a key. The Eagles this year, I think, the defensive line has definitely been a strength. When you look at especially the interior, Jalen Carter has been the rookie of the year so far, and then some, maybe even a defensive player of the year candidate. Jordan Davis has been equally as impactful. Fletcher Cox looks like 2018 Fletcher all over again. But the edge rushers haven't even really gotten it going. So maybe this is a get-right game against that Commanders front. I think that's definitely going to be the key. And if you look at last year's game, week 3, between the Eagles and Commanders, that was the key when they sacked Carson Wentz. I think it was like 9 times.
Yeah, absolutely. So the left end is Brandon Graham, right? That's the left side defensive end.
They've got Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham on the edge, Josh Sweat as well. Nolan Smith, their first-round pick, they haven't been using a whole lot, so the main rotation is, Reddick is kind of that linebacker edge hybrid, and then Sweat and Graham rotate on that left side.
Yeah, I mean, your left end, I mean, that's if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, that's where honestly every single rep, that's probably where my eyes would start. I know fans like to watch the football, and you have the benefit of watching the football, and that's amazing. But if you want to watch kind of the nuances of the game, I would probably start every rep, especially if you know it's a passing down. I would probably start every rep watching your left defensive end, because Andrew
Sweat's
Wiley
having a good year on that side too, David, for sure.
Yeah, and I love Josh Sweat. I mean, I love Josh Sweat coming out of college, but so super happy for him as a human. Obviously, not happy for him going up against teams that I cover. But Andrew Wiley has not been good. Andrew Wiley was brought in from the Kansas City Chiefs. He knows Eric Bieniemy's system, scheme, language, all of that stuff, and it was widely considered to be this move that was almost like putting another coach in the locker room and in the offensive line meeting rooms to help that group get up to speed. And I would argue that that's probably a smart move, but in turn, they also made him the starting right tackle. And coming into it, we looked at the PFF grades and we watched some of the tape and all this other stuff. And there were a lot of concerns coming into it, and those concerns have only proven to be accurate. But the surprising thing to me, honestly, Louis, is that he's actually not even, according to PFF's, pressure accountability stats, he's not even giving up the most pressures on that offensive line. It's actually center Nick Gates, which is a little bit of a surprise. But I also wonder if a little bit of that is because of the new relationship between he and Sadiq Charles, the left guard. The right guard, Sam Cosmi, much more experience. He's actually giving up the fewest pressures on the Commanders' offensive line right now. But Sadiq Charles is a new starter himself, so you got him. There have been a few issues from rep to rep about the amount of aggression, and you look at that safety that the Eagles got against the Buccaneers on Monday night, and you look at how passive that run blocking was up front on that specific play, especially. I mean, you've got offensive linemen standing up, getting pushed back into their own end zone against that Eagles defensive line. If you come passive against this Eagles defensive line, you're just going to get pushed around all day. And I'm worried about Sadiq Charles. And if Sadiq Charles gets pushed around, Nick Gates has to try to account for that. And then he's got his own struggles coming up too. You talk about a get-right game, Louis. I'll drop this for you. The Denver Broncos sacked Sam Howell 3 times. That's 3 of the 4 sacks that they've got this season. The Arizona Cardinals have 11 total, and most of those sacks came against the Washington Commanders. The Buffalo Bills sacked Sam Howell 9 times. They have 12 total for the entire season. So we're talking about teams that are ranked. The Bills and Cardinals are top 5 in teams in sacks this season, and about 80 to 90% of those sacks came in one game against the Washington Commanders. So while the Philadelphia Eagles sit 22nd right now in team sacks, which is surprising by itself, but I think that just shows you what teams are doing against them to try to get the ball out quicker. This could be a get-right game, but hopefully Sam Howell, and this is where the second part of that matchup comes in, is not just the offensive line, but Sam Howell also making timely decisions. He knows he needs to do that. Eric Bieniemy has been talking to him about it. Ron Rivera has been talking to him about it. It's just a matter of getting out there and actually doing it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where other teams have had success against this Eagles team, is when they don't give that front 4 time. Because as you mentioned earlier in the show, the Eagles do not blitz a whole lot because they can win with these 4 guys that they have out there, sometimes a 5-man front too. Even Jordan Davis, who last year was the weak link as a pass rusher, he's been very good as a pass rusher this year. A top-tier grade from PFF from a pass rush win standpoint. We all know about Jalen Carter too, and everybody else in this line from last year. But again, Mac Jones, I think when he had success, Kirk Cousins, even Baker Mayfield, when there was any positives, it was when they got the ball out in that first read. And that's the thing. That is the key for Sam Howell, is timely throws, especially over the middle. I think their starting linebackers, Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham, who are in place for Nakobe Dean right now, they've had 2 bounce-back weeks for sure, especially in coverage. But that is definitely still the weak area to attack. I think that's how New England almost came back, is utilizing those tight ends over the middle of the field. The Eagles' pass defense definitely bounced back against Tampa Bay. You got James Bradbury back, but those linebackers are hurt, or I should say they're not great. And then your slot corner, Avonte Maddox, is hurt. So maybe that middle of the field is the way the Commanders can attack this football team. Because as you mentioned, if they give this Eagles front a couple seconds, they're probably going to hit home.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something that I'm looking forward to is that middle of the field.
Yeah.
Sam has had some good success there for the most part, overall, and that's something that we saw them work on a lot during training camp. But you also want to see if the Washington Commanders can get Brian Robinson going. This is something I did, almost an entire episode on, just this week, Louis, is that Brian Robinson, he just eclipsed over 1,000 yards rushing for his career last week. Just a little bit over 1,000 yards right now. And while, yes, this is the second season that he's played in, when you accumulate the games that he's played in, he did it in less than the regular season's worth of games. So what I did is I went through and I dissected all the running backs in the NFL who have collected 1,000 yards or more in the last 20 regular season games, because that's last season and so far this season. And Brian Robinson's like top 7 in yards per carry. He's top 20 and some other yards. This is one of the better running backs in the National Football League. Yet he got 20 snaps against the Buffalo Bills, and he got 10 touches against the Buffalo Bills. And in those 10 touches, he averaged 7 yards per touch. Coming into this game, that was something we talked about on Locked On Commanders, is that the Buffalo Bills were susceptible to running teams, and especially hard running teams, and inside zone specifically. And then that could open up the middle of the field for a quarterback like Sam Howell. And instead of doing that, the Washington Commanders went completely one-sided with their offensive game plan. And even when they brought in Antonio Gibson to spell Brian Robinson and to get some other snaps, 31 of the times he was on the field out of 33 total times he was on the field, they called a pass play. And you cannot do that against NFL defense coordinators. They're going to pick up on that really fast. And I think that is why we saw the Bills' organic pass rush be even more successful, because basically if you see 24 on the field, pin your ears back, boys, it's pass.
Well, and I think it takes the pressure off an offensive line, too, that's struggling in pass pro when you can get the ground game going. The issue is, David, the Eagles right now are the number 1 ranked defense against the run. They've given up the fewest rushing yards. That is led by Jordan Davis in the middle. But Jalen Carter, he's getting all this pass rush hype because the numbers, every day there's another amazing stat about Carter getting to the quarterback. But PFF has him ranked right now as the 3rd best run defender, too. Even Milton Williams, their 4th tackle in the rotation, is ranked 5th. Fletcher Cox looks really good. So that is one area, though, Philly has been really good. I think that's kind of why the sack numbers have been a little bit lower, is that Sean Desai's defense, unlike Jonathan Gannon's, on early downs, it feels like they're playing the run and then reacting to the pass. Whereas with Gannon, it was the opposite. They were always anticipating pass and then reacting to run. So that might be even why the sack numbers are down a little more for the edge rushers. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an area, though, it's a strength of Philly. So it's going to be a tough battle for the Commanders. And I think that's kind of the same thing with the Eagles offense, too. It's like that's a strength of their game. DeAndre Swift, 178 yards 2 weeks ago, 130 this past week. But Washington's front, pretty good. It's one of the strengths of the team. So that's a fun battle to watch, too.
Yeah, absolutely. The Eagles giving up 3 yards per carry right now, which is, 4th best again, according to SIS. They've given up no rushing touchdowns. Is that accurate? Yeah. They've given them 0 rushing touchdowns this year. That's impressive for any defense. But, I think that the key thing that if you're the Washington Commanders offense, what you got to look at is their stuff rate, right? They've got a 22.9% stuff rate, which is not terrible, but it's about middle of the pack, which means you can get a couple of yards here, a couple of yards there. And if Brian Robinson keep going downhill, if you bring in, say, a fullback like Alex Arma, or you put Chris Rodriguez Jr., the rookie running back, in as a fullback, he's a big dude. If you can get a couple of, successful first down runs, get 4 yards on them here or there. But even if you just get 2 or 3 yards here and there, force the Eagles. I think that's what the Buccaneers tried to do. The problem with the Buccaneers game plan is when it obviously was not working, they didn't go away from that game plan. And I think that's where Eric Bieniemy has got to just be aware, be smart, and kind of say, okay, let's try the inside zone. Let's try the power. Let's try the edges. Okay, if it's not working, then we got to figure something out, whether it's screens, whether it's bubble screens or receivers, quick sprint outs to the tight ends. And that's kind of the interesting thing that I'm surprised we haven't seen more of, because we saw a lot of it during training camp, is some of those super quick, and we've seen it time and time again, Louis, especially, even in the college game, but you also see it in the NFL. Some of these quick hitters just get the quarterback, 4 for 4 for 14 yards. Like, it's not a great stat line, but let's get the quarterback kind of in a rhythm, see some passes, leave the hand, quick decisions, get receptions. It's not unlike a 3-point shooter like Ray Allen. He wants to go on the floor before a game and he wants to drain some buckets because it gives him that confidence. Do that with your quarterback early, and then you have to test the running game. You know what I mean? Antonio Gibson, to his benefit, he had 18 yards running against Buffalo Bills on 2 carries. So it's not like he wasn't doing a good job in the running game himself. Give him some snaps so that this Eagles defense can't just predict what you're doing based on your personnel. And I think let's see some more 12 package. You know what I mean? Your offensive line is struggling. Put 2 tight ends out there to help them out.
Sure, for sure. I think, David, for the Eagles offense, one thing, the most inconsistent part of their game so far, I think, has been the passing attack. You're still seeing every week the explosive plays down the field to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They haven't really gotten tight end Dallas Goedert going all that much quite yet through 3 weeks, but that's definitely been the most inconsistent part. That's something I want to see them put together this week. I think it was their best performance against Tampa Bay, 277 passing yards for Jalen, and that amazing touchdown to Olmid Zaccheaus. But again, 2 interceptions in that game, still some inaccuracy issues. He's not totally in sync with his play caller, Brian Johnson, right now. That's again, the run game is going to be the bread and butter of this Eagles offense for as long as they have this offensive line led by Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. But at the same time, I do want to see this passing game hit that ceiling they had last year, because that's, to me, how you become a true championship contender, is when you can become an elite passing attack pretty much whenever you want. They haven't really gotten to that gear quite yet. Again, it hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been elite like last year. So, I think that's going to be a good test. And how has rookie cornerback Emmanuel Forbes looked for the Commanders through 3 weeks? He was somebody I liked a lot in the draft.
Yeah, he's a rookie. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's had some good moments. He's also had some bad moments. He's gotten beat on a few. There was an early 3rd and long where Josh Allen, was able to drop the ball over his head into Stephon Diggs. But it really, I've watched that play time and time again. I think it was just a really great play by 2 of the best in the business. There's not a lot that you can really expect Emmanuel Forbes to do on a scramble play like that. But he's certainly shown some of the flashes of why the Washington Commanders spent that pick on him. But he also has looked, the part as a rookie. And I think that's why they're kind of rolling him out a little bit slower than maybe people anticipated, not getting, the lion's share of the snaps and all that stuff early on in the season. But as he continues to grow, his role will continue to grow as well. And I think, as you face teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, who I do think, even as DeAndre Swift continues to just tear people apart, I think part of that reason is they have to account for those receivers, and they have to keep the 2 high safeties, and they have to kind of clear the box out a little bit just because of what you're doing. That's going to force Emmanuel Forbes onto the field a little bit. And, it's a weekly process, but I think that the good thing that the Commanders defense has shown is at critical times they can contain the explosive passes. It's whether or not they can continue to do it in the beginning of the game. Again, they held the Buffalo Bills to 16 points into the 4th quarter last week, and I think that's pretty good. A lot of defenses would be very happy with that performance going into the 4th quarter. They had a 1-play drive that they gave up, just like they did in Denver. So you don't want that. But when you look at the totality of it, 16-0, and then eventually you get a pick 6 going the other way, and then just kind of the wheels fell off after that. If they can hold the Philadelphia Eagles 16 points through 3 and some change, 3 quarters and some change,
they take that,
I think you're happy as a defense.
For sure. This is Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles and Locked On Commanders. Louis DiBiase alongside David Harrison. Keys to victory between the Eagles and Commanders coming up next. Guys, today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you got to do, select 2 or more players, pick more or less than their projected stats, and place your entry. I took the over or more for Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown on Monday Night Football against Tampa Bay. Big win there. Prize Picks, they offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts. Like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. Prize Picks also now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Again, just pick 2 or more players, and then if they're going to pick more or less than their projected stats that week. Do you think it's more for A.J. Brown again? Is this the Dallas Goedert game for the Eagles? Is this the game Brian Robinson shows up for the Washington Commanders? Head over to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use that promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. We're wrapping up Crossover Thursday right here on the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Commanders podcast. Louis DiBiase alongside David Harrison. So, David, I don't love doing like score predictions, 31-20 Eagles over Commanders. For me, I want to do it more this way. If the Washington Commanders win, if they beat the Eagles on Sunday, it's because of what?
Yeah, if the Washington Commanders beat the Philadelphia Eagles, it's because they're going to ground their running game. Yeah. And that's interesting to say when you consider A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith are on this team, but I'm fairly confident. They got their butts kicked the first time this matchup happened last year. You know what I mean? But I really think they learned a lot from that. And I think that showed a little bit in the second matchup, the Monday night upset that they pulled off there in Philly. So I think those lessons will carry over to this season. All of those players are back. And then you got, hopefully, again, Emmanuel Forbes and second round pick Quan Martin, potentially making an impact there as well. So as long as they continue to kind of learn from those lessons, I think that you can have some success there. We talked about rushing averages and all that stuff as a defense. You look at the Washington Commanders rushing average allowed. They're not very good in the NFL right now, but I also think a little bit of that, this is where stats meet film, right, is a little bit skewed because Josh Allen had some huge runs last week that really upped that average. James Cook, 50 of his 98 yards came on the final Bills drive of the game, and they came on 3 runs. You know what I mean? So when you take those 3 runs out, which at that time, I think honestly, I think Louis, everybody was just ready for the buses to get warmed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, felt like it.
If you take those out, which they happen, so you don't take them out. But if you take them out from a contextual standpoint, James Cook had less than 50 yards rushing on about 12, 13 carries, which isn't a terrible day by any means, but it's also not a great day. You know what I mean? So if they can contain the rushing game, they did it last year in Philly. They kept Jalen Hurts from really hurting them with his legs. If they can do that, force him to pass. This isn't a force him to pass like he's Justin Fields. He's still Jalen Hurts. He's still a good quarterback. But you would rather Jalen Hurts have to kill you with his arm than be able to kill you with his legs. Because if he can do both, then you're in a really bad way. So I think that's going to be the key on the defensive side of the ball is making sure Jalen Hurts has to throw the ball and not letting DeAndre Swift continue this amazing run that is making the Detroit Lions probably pull their hair out right now.
I think for the Eagles, it's if they can kind of do what they did the first game against Washington last year. As you mentioned, the Commanders definitely learned from that first game, upset the Eagles, and that perfect season at the Link on Monday Night Football. But I think you look at the first game, what happened, they totally controlled the line of scrimmage, and it's obvious and cheesy to say, but if this defensive line can sack Sam Howell, they need the sack numbers need to get there. They need to hit home, and because if Washington can buy a little bit of time, not that the Eagles secondary is a weak link anymore. Darius Slay and James Bradbury, they pretty much locked down Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but they are still susceptible, I think, over the middle of the field with those linebackers. The slot game, because Maddox is out, Bradbury's been playing in and out there. When he's inside, Josh Jobs on the outside. He had a pretty brutal game against the Buccaneers. He was the one weak link in coverage. To me, this defensive line has to hit home like the Buffalo Bills did, because Washington, again, I've been saying it for years, they have a lot of the pieces on both sides of the ball to compete. They just need adequate quarterback play. I mean, that's a great trio of receivers. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel. You don't want to be able to have those guys be able to get downfield. And so I think that's the key, again, is for the Eagles is they need more from these edge rushers. The defensive tackles have been there. Josh Sweat's been great on the edge, but need more from especially Brandon Graham and Hassan Reddick on Sunday.
Yeah, and obviously for the Commander standpoint, you know what I mean? What the offense does or doesn't do is gonna be a big part of this as well. But I wanted to talk defense a little bit. The defense is not getting a lot of attention these days because of what's happening on the offensive side of the ball.
Sure.
But yeah, man. I mean, if again, if we have a repeat of what happened against the Buffalo Bills, and Sam Howell is just not comfortable, not confident in what he's doing in the game, then the Philadelphia Eagles are probably going to come away with this. But I think, the key thing there and you just mentioned it, right? We've been saying for years here on the Washington beat, if the Commanders can get average or better quarterback play, this is a highly competitive team. We talked to Ron Rivera Monday after the loss of the Buffalo Bills, and he said, this is a good team. This is a talented roster, and they're going to get it there. They're going to get it figured out. Whether or not they're going to get it figured out for week 4, that's the question this week. I don't know if it's going to happen. I'll say, I mean, and I've already said I've got a YouTube short out there and an Instagram reel out there. I said it following the Buffalo Bills game. This Commanders team can beat the Philadelphia Eagles because they've done it, and doesn't mean they're going to do it. Doesn't mean it's easy, right? When they did it, it wasn't easy. But does this team have the talent to do it? Absolutely, and that's the beautiful thing about the National Football League. The Arizona Cardinals can beat the Dallas Cowboys. The Washington Commanders can beat the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not about can you do it. It's about will you do it. And yeah, some very important things coming up for the Commanders to have to do in order to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I've started using this golf analogy, which is weird because I'm not even a golfer, but I kind of look at it as the Philadelphia Eagles come into this thing. I would probably say 3 strokes up, right? Like this, if you're looking at this as like a final hole matchup, they're 3 strokes up when you just stack up the teams against each other right now this season. So the Washington Commanders have to find a way to recoup those 3 strokes and even gain 1 to come away with a win in this game. That's going to be the key. And it starts with containing the run, both from DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts, keeping a lid on the receivers. That's 2 strokes. And then offensively, you've got to take advantage of the fact that this team does not blitz. Give your quarterback time. There's your 3 strokes. If you can find something else there, maybe get some explosives, maybe get some takeaways, there's your 4th stroke. That's how you win this game. For the Philadelphia Eagles, though, you're 3 strokes up. You know what I mean? So you just got to make sure you don't come in and give the Commanders too many advantages.
It's
so
that's
how
I felt about every game so far, David. I think they're up, and if they lose, it's more, not to say the Eagles are just the best team of all time, but a lot of the times it feels like it's the mental mistakes and the penalties, drop balls, bad play calling that they're doing that's allowing some of these teams that are good but not great to stay in these football games. So I think that's for the Eagles, is just stay out of their own way on Sunday. 1 o'clock kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Eagles Commanders. That's going to do it, though, for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Commanders podcast right here on Crossover Thursday. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. For David Harrison, I'm Louis DiBiase signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and enjoy the game on Sunday.